start 2023, I said within 5 years, there are no more programmers.
In 2023, Emad Mostaque made this prediction. It's 2026 and the world is already moving in that direction. In this episode, he goes deeper into what's coming next. AI, jobs, and the future none of us are ready for. For most people, job does way more than just providing you a source of income. It's your identity, it gives you some meaning.
Yeah, I think the value of human intelligence will turn negative on the market. So we'll be the dumbest people on the team. If you look task by task, I basically said in 3 years, and it's been 3 years since ChatGPT was launched, there isn't a cognitive task that can be done on the other side of a screen that an AI won't be able to do better. Next year, the call center industry is just dead. It's going to be gone. And so this will happen industry after industry. And the question is, what are you rotating to? You had to learn to code. Well, again, I challenge anyone to be able to code better than Opus 4.5. And within 5 to 10 years, the robots are coming as well. It's like Jarvis from Iron Man. We will spend more time talking to these models than our own spouses. They will be our children's best friends, and that is cognitively incredibly dangerous.
I think you made the point very clearly that this is not like any previous technological transition. This time it will not create new jobs.
This is going to be a big issue for India in particular because
Emad, welcome to SparX. At SparX, we focus on all topics concerning deep tech, how it is shaping society, economy, where the world is going. You have been quite a pioneer in AI world in many different ways. I think Stability Diffusion first showed the world what's truly possible. It was quite magical for people to just type in some text and see all these really vivid, realistic images show up. You've been also a huge proponent of keeping all these AI systems and technology as much open access as possible. Given how much time you have spent with AI all your life, do you continue to be surprised with how AI is developing and now seems like part of a plan which can be reasonably extrapolated? And you have ventured out and written this book, we'll talk about that, but you have some views about where we're headed. So I'm curious whether somebody like Emad gets still surprised by what AI can do or not.
Yeah, so first, thank you for having me on. It's a great show and I'm privileged to be here. It's so exciting all the time and it's so surprising. Like, even when you predict things will happen, like a few years ago, we released the world's best video model. Mm-hmm. And we were extrapolating the curves and we said, we'll have Hollywood level video by around about 2025, 2026. Mm-hmm. And there's one thing saying that, but now using LTX or the new Runway or Luma, like you type in a few words and you can't tell it. It's still amazing to see. Mm-hmm. Or even like with some of the harder stuff, like Nous Research just released a model that I was using yesterday that can score number 2 on the Putnam math competition. Mm-hmm. And I was using it on my MacBook and I was like, this is kind of impossible. Again, you can see it from the curves. It would be around about this year, next year. Yeah. But the fact that you've got like a world-class mathematician undergrad on your laptop is just, it's insane. So I'm constantly surprised.
And does this continuous scaling, is it based on current understanding of the architectures we have, technology we have, and how much at some point there is a concern that, current scaling laws may run out, it may require new breakthroughs. How do you process that? You think is your mental model that one way or other will figure it out? If the current architecture runs out of steam, something else will emerge, or current is good enough, we can just keep scaling it up for a while?
We haven't really seen that many improvements in actual base underlying architecture. Mm-hmm. And in fact, if you look at autoregressive transformers versus diffusion versus recurrent neural networks and others, they all tend to have about the same performance. Yeah. What really matters is the underlying data. Mm-hmm. And so when this scaling phase that we were in until just recently, it was like having a pressure cooker, And you make your lamb curry in the pressure cooker and it comes out tender even though it's bad quality lamb,
Right.
Whereas now people have said, like, what are the good cuts effectively? So you've had synthetic data, you've had feedback data, you've had other things. Like the Naos model I just mentioned, the math model, they trained on Quen, the Chinese-based model, with really high quality math data and then some verification and interesting things.
Yeah.
But it was just this general model that went suddenly from being able to get 20% of the answers right to 70% of the answers right, just with that. So I think what you've seen with the big labs, and GPT 4.5 was the first example of it, is that really big scaled up models, the scaling that way kind of ended because it was a substitute for the data. Now you look at thinking machines that raised 2 billion at 12 billion, Mira Murati's company and others. It's all about the reinforcement learning. It's all about high quality data. This is something that Ilya Sutskever, recently said in his podcast with Darkesh as well. Like, that's what it was intimating between the lines. It's all about the data quality. And I think it always has been about the data quality. It's just we didn't know what was good data from bad before.
And what do you think is the limiting factor here? What is the ultimate source of this good quality data? Is it just all out there and we need to parse it out through applying human intelligence or better algorithms, or we need to innovate and somehow create more high quality data to keep having this performance improvement?
I think there's enough data in the world, and realistically, to get like human level performance, I don't think you need that much. Like, we trained a model called AI Medical. It was on top of Quen again, 8 billion parameter model for medicine and health, and it outperforms ChatGPT and every doctor on just 8 billion parameters through high quality, because you had the generalized learning that we then specified using reinforcement learning and some other interesting things. With a verifier that checks the outputs and knows what's a wrong answer, it gets even better and it leaps forward. Oops, so done something to my camera.
Yeah, camera zoom. It's fine. I think we'll get multiple. That's fine.
Yeah, we'll get a zoom. I'll lean back.
Yeah.
There we go. Ben needs to show me the instructions. The nature of kind of this whole data thing, I think, is just we need the right type of data in an open way for the right type of models, for the right types of things, because too much of it has been let's build geniuses and polymaths. But when you have an accountant, he doesn't need to know how to do heart surgery, right? Or when you have a lawyer, do they really need to know all the latest stuff on Reddit, etc.? So I think you'll see a lot more specialized models, and I think we have more than enough data. It just hasn't been put in context, and it's not knowledge properly either. And
you mentioned actually a couple of things you mentioned. Let me follow up on both. First is company like Mira Murati's, as you mentioned, raising $2 billion at $12 billion valuation. On one hand, as you said, that architectures have not improved that much or not even changed significantly for a while now. The world has enough data which presumably accessible to everybody, and you are making it accessible through all the work you are doing at Intelligent Internet that we'll talk about. But what differentiates a company like Mira's? What do they know? What specialized skills or what's unique that a company like hers, whether her or any other company has, which is not generally accessible?
So I don't really think there's that much secret skill here. So the previous company had Stability AI. Stable Diffusion was our most famous model.
Yeah.
But we achieved state-of-the-art in every modality. So from image to video, audio, Stable Audio was Times Innovation of the Year in 2023. 300 million downloads. But I think the key thing is the team were able to take a risk. They were able to take a chance. Because if you want to move the state of the art, you need to be able to take a risk. Why doesn't Meta have a state of the art model anymore? Because they became too bureaucratic, right? Why hasn't Amazon built a state of the art model? Because again, you're not encouraged to take risks to do state of the art. OpenAI and others, they had this culture of trying things, engineering, scaling, etc. And again, for the scaling era, you couldn't keep up. Like Sam Altman coming to India and saying, well, you can't keep up, right? You're going to need billions, trillions. But then you look at DeepSeek, and the DeepSeek model cost $5 million worth of compute. And you're like, even Indian startups can get that, but why can't Indian companies do that? Well, I had a team in India that built state-of-the-art models because I told them to make mistakes, but that's not a very Indian classical thing to do. It's like, try different things and make mistakes. In fact, this is really interesting because the latest models, like the new DeepSeek math model, got a gold medal on the IMO. And, a lot of people listening to this may have done the IMO or tried. It's really not very easy. No. It's open source. And what that actually has is a verifier that it does lots of wrong questions and makes mistakes, and then it learns from its mistakes. And that's how they got this sudden leap up. And I think that AI model building is very much the same. We tried different things, we learned different things, and the final training run is the big one. But it's gone now from these big breakthroughs to, with Tinker on thinking machines, you can just do RL with one click. In fact, you can even do training runs now with Claude Code and Hugging Face. Like, it's got an MCP adapter, so you can just literally just do it all from your terminal. So things are becoming more and more standardized, and we're moving up the stack in terms of capabilities, from models to the agents and that infrastructure now.
So that's quite encouraging. The point you're making is that access to talent and data is not necessarily limited to few companies, which may end up controlling the fate of the world, which is one of the scenarios you articulate very early in your book. But I want to go back to you mentioned Qwen and DeepSeek. It's very interesting how world has changed in the last few years. It used to be that China is this closed economy, everything is secretive, and US is beacon of open source, and so much community resources are being developed. But looks like China has taken a lead in open source, and they are able to match and beat performance of all the proprietary models quite consistently. What does that represent? What's driving this big shift, and what does it mean for the world that we are heading into?
Well, I think it's because AI models rapidly became a shift from innovation to engineering. Once you had the basic libraries, you had the basic nature of scaling AdamW or Muon and kind of some of these other things.
Yeah.
It moved very much to engineering, and Chinese are incredible engineers, it has to be said. But then they also had to do it out of necessity is the mother of virtue, right? Yeah. They couldn't get the chips. So what they built instead was really highly specialized models. Whereas again, you have GPT 4.5 was $450 per million tokens. Yeah. Qwen and DeepSeek are 50 cents per million tokens, right? And China also has this big advantage in that there's still resistance in the US for using the models, and they're slow adopters, whereas in China, you stick it straight into WeChat, it's available to everyone. The Chinese, you'll use the models all day long. So the market is there as well that justifies this. And then they needed to optimize the chips. So they really had to think about the data versus if you've got 100,000 GPUs, then that's the hammer, everything looks like a nail. Just chuck all the stuff in there. You don't need to worry so much. If you're trying to build the most optimized model to achieve a certain goal, then you really need to worry. If you're constraint focused, then you really need to worry. And now it's moved to the point whereby 50% of the ICML and NeurIPS papers are from Chinese first authors. Because the other side was the US lab shut down because they thought the model infrastructure and other things was their competitive advantage. But it's very strange because California has no non-competes.
Yeah.
No notice. So, if you want to get the secret of OpenAI's latest model, just hire someone and you'll know it the next day. Like, the algorithms here are not very complicated. Like, I'd recommend a lot of people listening to this, just use NanoChat that Andre Karpathy did, right?
Yeah.
4,000 lines of code. You can train your own model. It's got a chatbot. It's got everything in there. If you learn that, you'll see these models are only a few hundred lines of code. For the core loops. It's crazy. So again, there's no real secrets here, but they still shut up.
Right. But but there is a bit of somewhat of a contradiction that as you say, in California there's no non-compete, and Mark Zuckerberg used it to the fullest. He threw everything in kitchen sink to hire everybody he could get his attention to, and yet as you're saying Meta no longer has the frontier models. What is the explanation for that? Despite in some ways being an open secret, and anyone with the money has access to the talent, yet not being able to do what other people are able to do.
So I think it's a question of what are you trying to do? Like at Stability, we made a mistake on our stable LM model, for example. Like we'd funded GPTJ and Eleuther AI, and they had the best open source language models. Yeah. But then we threw the kitchen sink at it. We were like, let's have completely clean licensed data. Let's try different architectures. Let's show what we can do just on Stable Diffusion. And then you were trying to do too many things. If you want to replicate a DeepSeek level model, you can look at what Archie are kind of doing in others, which is just a very good quality data set trained in exactly the same way. But that's not good enough to justify your $1 billion package at Meta, you know? You need to go beyond. So you try different things, but ironically that makes it more difficult to keep up with the state of the art. Like, it is not difficult to train a really great 7 billion parameter model or even 1 billion parameter model that can achieve close to state of the art. To train one that beats state of the art is difficult. So there's this kind of little gap here that we have. And so again, they're not incentivized to do that. Similarly, if you look at Llama 4, Llama 4 was not like the previous llamas that anyone could use on their laptops or graphics cards. And that's why Quen, you know, they build models that you can use from 1 billion parameters up to the 3 billion active 30 billion parameter MOEs, all the way up to the 200. There's something everyone can use with really high quality data underlying it.
So you're saying,
I think that's what driven.
Whether you're a startup or a $2 trillion company, you still need constraints and focus and take a lot of risk, I guess. You know, it's a combination of that. There is no running away from that.
Yeah, like let's give a practical example. Essential AI, right? Ashish Vaswani.
Yeah.
Like one of the original authors, they just released their RNJ model, you know, named after Ramanujam. And if you look at it, there is, apart from muon scaling, like Kimi did with their KT models, there is nothing original in the architecture. It was all data. And it's a top performing model and it's really interesting. But again, they didn't take risks. They didn't go straight to 40 billion or 100 billion. They just said, let's build a really great 7 billion parameter model. And the total cost of training that model is less than $1 million. So, but again, you know, how many Indian startups, again, because they raise more than that, would think, let's build a really great million. You know, again, you tend to overshoot, even if you're a small startup, and you try to do different things, and then,
And you earlier mentioned, you know, the medical model that you guys built, which is also 8 billion parameters, and Ashish's model. You think that ballpark, you know, say 10, 20, 30 billion parameter models will get to a level of intelligence and performance and so on for specialized use cases? A lot of heavy lifting of our everyday intelligence can be run by models of roughly this size?
Yeah, that plus verifiers will do it. And again, I give the example of the Nous model. Like again, listeners here will know the Putnam math competition is a very hard undergraduate math competition, right? Like I studied math at Oxford, and I found it really hard. You know, it was a tuned version of Quen A3B 30B, which is a 3 billion active parameter model with 30 billion total, you know? And so that will fit on 32 gigabytes of RAM, you know, so a MacBook, or quantized, you can get it lower. But the fact is, that would score a top level performance, like number 2 last year. This year is a bit easier, so maybe lower. Most of the jobs that you will ever do are easier and tasks than doing a Putnam math competition. Again, there is a defined solution and other things, but now we have meta verifiers coming, we have other things. You will see small models plus meta verifiers plus verifiers in agentic workflows with context sharing, being able to solve most things. And I don't think you'll need more than 8 billion active parameters. Like again, the MOE and sparsity mean maybe you'll need more, but the key constraint here is just RAM. And if you build for 16 gigabytes of VRAM with 4-bit quantization, then that is about the level of the Nous model. So it's about 30 billion total sparse parameters. Because the chips on any new smartphone, on any MacBook, are more than fast enough to run that faster than you can think. And the final bit of this is thinking time compute and sleep time compute. So what we'll have is we'll have models and agents that do our tasks and then think about what they've learned as they're plugged in. And then they'll just tailor more and more to us. And that data distribution on the underlying, just like we had the LoRa's adapting to our faces when we had customization, will be immense, because obviously it'll understand our context better. You don't need 100 billion active parameters unless you're like a super particle physicist or, you know, doing crazy, like you're not that smart to be able to know how to use those big models, the vast majority of people. So I think you will see specialization at the lower end, and you'll see a lot of edge inference that can be run on 3-4-year-old chips in the cloud.
And look, listening to that is making me optimistic. You know, if we are, say, like the relatively smaller size models with these verifiers, you know, sub-$1 million training cost at some point, edge computing with the chips which are already there, Does that mean that sometimes this fear of big tech controlling the future of the world is probably overblown? If we are going to have all these models accessible to all of us to use however we want, then perhaps the risk of big tech controlling the destiny of the world is maybe, we are overblowing that.
Also, I think, the way I like to put it is attention is what they need. It's the only scarce human resource, right?
Yeah.
So if you think of the way we use the models today, it is the really smart buddy. You're really smart. I tap you on the shoulder and I say, hey, I need to have some information on deep tech, right? Tell me the latest that's going on in, quantum supremacy or whatever. And then you'll tell me. And then you'll forget about it. That's the way we're used to using models. Like they're just bunches of weights. We put prompts in, we get it out, and then it goes on. In 2 years, the operating system will be the AI closest to you is your best friend. It's like Jarvis from Iron Man, and it coordinates all the other AIs. And what the big tech companies are trying to do is they're trying to own that. There's a big difference between ChatGPT teaching your kid and you having an AI next to your kid that's aligned with them that uses ChatGPT.
Right.
That's a completely different control game. It's a different ballpark.
Yeah.
And the way that I'd put it is this. TikTok is banned in India. Why? Because Indian attention algorithms, right? It would be like Al Jazeera or China's Communist TV coming into Indian citizens.
Yeah.
The AI that's closest to Indian citizens has to be an aligned one, because otherwise it's going to be so persuasive. In fact, we've seen studies showing how persuasive they are. Top percentile amongst humans from last year's models, let alone this year's models.
Yeah.
And now, if you look on X, they're getting ponytails and all sorts of characteristics that can speak to you. Like the big companies know the models are commodifying. The total cost of tokens is collapsing, so they want to own that layer next to you. And just to round this up, I'll give some idea about the cost of tokens.
Yeah.
So the average person speaks about 10 million tokens a year. So it's about 7 million tokens of words is 10 million. 7 million words is about 10 million tokens. A bit more for India because the tokenizers aren't so good. So 10 million tokens. So GPT-3 was $600 per million.
Yeah.
So it was about $6,000 for 10 million tokens. Actually, $6,000. GPT 4.0 was $40. GPT 5 is $10. Grok 4 Fast is 50 cents. And it goes straight down.
Yeah.
So by this time next year, to have as many tokens as a person speaks will be less than $1. As many tokens as a person thinks, 10 times more, will be $10. And so they all know this is coming. So that's why they're trying to just dominate that end point. Who's the AI that's closest to you?
Got it. And that AI which is close to you is presumably, one is obviously it's watching you every day, learning, knows what you're thinking, what you're concerned about, and will have a outsized influence on whatever choice of consumption, purchase, or any other, work decision, life decision you make, and perhaps, not worrying about, all the possible monetizations. But I guess that's probably the prize that big tech is probably, well positioned to capture.
Yeah, I mean, you've already seen studies showing the clicks per million of selling latent space is much better than selling backlinks.
Right.
So it says beer, it says Kingfisher, or it says Bud Light. That's a valuable thing to train into the neural nets of the AI. And so, I think that's a huge market. But then also it's like whose culture, whose politics. You've seen studies showing the persuasive effects of these models are huge.
Yeah.
And in very strange ways sometimes. Like there's the trolley problem, right? A train is hurtling down the tracks. There's 7 people on one side, 1 person on the other. It's going to hit the 7. Do you pull the lever to hit the 1 person?
Yeah.
So Dan Hendricks at Scale AI and XAI kind of did this study where he tried to see what the ratio would be for different races.
Yeah.
How many Americans per Indian or Nigerian or Pakistani?
Yeah.
And I think it came to 10 to 1, 7 to 1. But the interesting thing was this. It would pick 10 Americans over 1 Nigerian because all the people that were labeling the data were Nigerians and Pakistanis and Indians. So it seeped into the bias of the model in the other direction. So we have to be very careful because, we will spend more time talking to these models than our own spouses. They will be our children's best friends, and that is cognitively incredibly dangerous.
Imad, I want to come to your new book, Last Economy. As was I was going through the book, and first right off the bat, you make this claim that in roughly give or take, a few hundred years, in about 1,000 days from now, which is just 3 years, the current economic social setup as we know is probably going to get upended in dramatic ways. You use the analogy of phase transition. You really don't see the steam here, even at 99 degrees, and that at 100 degrees you have nothing but steam. And at least in your worldview, we are kind of headed towards this future where lot of current socio-economic structure that has been built out in this economy of ubiquitous, ultra cheap intelligence will just not hold water anymore.
Yeah, I think the value of human intelligence will turn negative on the market. So it will be the dumbest people on the team.
Well, in Indian civilization, they have said, like silence is the best form of intelligence. So yeah, maybe we'll all learn to say.
So, in 2023, I think, the start of 2023, I got a lot of flack because I said within 5 years, there are no more programmers, especially from the Indian audience. Because obviously this is a big BPO kind of sector. But if you use Claude Code today, how many of you can really say you're a better programmer than Opus 4.5? Like, it's one-shotting things. And it's going to be better next year, and it's going to be better next year. And 90% of Anthropic's code is now written by AI, because it just kind of works, If you look task by task, I basically said in 3 years, and it's been 3 years since ChatGPT was launched. December 1st, 2022 was ChatGPT's launch. August of 2022 was Stable Diffusion. In 3 years' time, there isn't a cognitive task that can be done on the other side of a screen that an AI won't be able to do better. Now, that doesn't mean all the jobs immediately disappear or anything like that, but the AI to do a task will cost a cent. A human will cost $10, $20, $100. What are people going to pick? They're going to pick the AI, and the way they interact with the AI is like this. You can Zoom call it, you can WhatsApp it, you won't know it's not a human on the other side. In fact, workers will be replaced because they'll take all your logs of all your messages, all of the documents you've built, and just create a virtual double of you. And that will be your assistant, and then it'll replace you. Just like Amazon warehouse workers now have holographic glasses that are training the robots on how to replace them, right? So I don't see a way out of this, even if the technology stops today. Again, I can't think of a task on the other side of a screen the AI can't do better and make less mistakes on. And so that's incredibly worrying, and we have to be prepared for that.
One somewhat contrarian perspective is recently, 6 months ago, McKinsey came out with this report, and McKinsey is obviously no one's source of what's going to happen in the world. But just as one analyst, the headline was pretty interesting, which said AI is now everywhere except in corporate P&Ls. Because if you take stock companies P&L of 25 versus 24, it down to second decimal, it looks exactly identical. Somewhere, if we are on the verge of this socio-economic upending, these P&L also need to, at some point, will start to look dramatically different. They have to.
Yeah, it's next year. So basically, this is a capability question. The first reasoning model was OpenAI's O1 a year ago. And now, who's top of the Maths Olympiad, Physics Olympiad, Coding Olympiad? Super forecasting AI is now number 8 in the super forecasting competition, all thanks to reasoning. The next level is meta verification, context sharing, and being able to work for arbitrarily long amount of time proactively. Then once that's all brought together in a package, the talented Mr. Ripley type, I create a clone of you and I replace you, is about a year away. Right now, it's just too hard to use. The way that you use AI is for tasks, not jobs. And this is also why, as you saturate the benchmarks that are coming forward are vending bench and dollar-based benchmarks. Because the AI can max all the other benchmarks, from simple QA to even ArcAGI and things like that, which is really, really hard. Humanity's last exam is really, really hard. So then it becomes about dollars. And so I think having this persistent memory, this continuous learning as a system, not a model, having the ability to interface seamlessly in a corporate environment so you don't know it's an AI. And again, we have real-time video, real-time speech. You can look at Tavus and HeyGen and other things like that as well. And the AI can speak every language. These are key things that bring it forward. In fact, I think there was an Indian startup recently that released like 150 million parameter speech model. So that runs even on the edge. You can't tell it from a human, right? So the AI's got a voice. But we needed all these bits to come together because it's a very different world from using GPT-4o, as most corporates were 6 months ago, to what we have now, to what we're going to have in 6 months, to what we're going to have in a year. And so that's why when I wrote the book, like, I just self-published it. Thankfully, it's like #1 on AI on Amazon and things like that. Because I was like, we don't have time, because we could see that inflection point coming. In fact, we have our open source agent, AI agent, just the level of quality advance in that thing, and it's top of the benchmarks has been crazy. So again, we can see this world coming, and it's inevitable.
So Emad, if you were to meet a Fortune 500 company CEO and the person is looking for advice, how do I plan my life, my company over the next 5 years? What are some of your advice?
So I think this is intelligence as a force multiplier, right?
Yeah.
And the key thing is, the one thing the AIs don't have is they don't have skin in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, again, they're a bunch of weights, but they don't care about the company.
Yeah.
They don't care about your family. They don't care about your country, right?
Mm-hmm.
They just sit there.
Yeah.
You care about your company. You care about your family. You care about your country. So it's the application of that AI, but then you need to know what you can do with it.
Mm-hmm.
So the best thing you can do at every level, from corporate again to personal, is use the AI regularly like a muscle.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you do, I guarantee you this, if a company or a school or a family said 1 hour a week or 1 hour a day, you have to use vibe coding, generative AI, any of these things. It doesn't matter what you do, you just have to use it.
Yeah.
They will outperform any company or community that doesn't. Like building things together as a family is a great way to come together as a family. Like make movies. Get all of your team, it doesn't matter who they are, vibe coding on AI Agent or Replit or Lovable.
Yeah.
Like the fact that they can suddenly realize they'll do things just changes the muscle and the way of thinking, right? Because to build an app, it used to be, well, I have to get the speciality, and I have to waste this time and this money. Now it's like in an hour, not an hour, in 3 minutes you can have an app now.
Yeah.
And the way you update it is you talk to it. Like how amazing is that? So I would say that they need to get their people changing their mentality by having just 1 hour, just do 1 hour a day, building whatever as teams and then showing what they can do. It changes the mentality of being able to use this technology. Applying the technology internally through targeted teams whose job is to increase the efficiency, but more than that, the top line of the company. Like a lot of this stuff will be focused on the bottom line, cost cutting, but actually it should be about the top line. Like that's the best thing to do. You'll outcompete people that don't. And not be scared of the technology either. Like you don't really need to know how the models work to use the systems now.
Yeah.
It's just you have to not be scared to use the system. Like I've seen some heads of sovereign wealth funds now vibe coding.
Right.
And again, they were like, wait, what? I can build a stock tracker. I can do this. Like there's nobody that can't use it from like a baby to a grandma. But how many CEOs listening to this podcast have actually vibe coded something?
And let's say, maybe they start all vibe coding, and this is, somewhat related to the point you make in the book. We just all start producing a lot more, and the overall productivity just, goes to the roof. And as a collective human society, we presume we just produce more than we'll probably ever need. And that's probably what linked to, I guess, in some ways, what you say, the complete upheaval of the socio-economic system, because we have always worked with in the environment of scarcity. We don't know what abundance mean, how to deal with it. And
I've got like the full academic paper coming soon where we actually model this. It doesn't look good because again, when humans are outcompeted by AI that's not necessarily genius, but just doesn't drop the ball, great cooks as opposed to chefs, as it were, you can't outcompete a fully AI company. Us on the other side of a screen. Like it's impossible in 3, 4, 5 years, definitely in 10 years. And within 5 to 10 years, the robots are coming as well. And robots will cost $1 an hour. And most of the robotics challenges on the neural network stuff, I think is pretty much solved in the next year. So this is a big wave that's coming to us. And it basically means this, like there's a period where you can make a lot of money by applying this technology and doing stuff. But over time, you just will stop hiring humans. And then you'll move almost completely GPU, as it were, for your staff. Unless you're very much in that I need to be there in person type of job. Like a surgeon will take a long time to replace, right? As will a hairdresser. You're not going to get your hair cut. If you're in an agrarian village society, like me back home in Bangladesh, some people listen to, that's not going to get replaced by robots. It's pretty self-consistent.
Yeah.
But we do need to think about how money flows when the private sector gets crowded out by GPUs, and then the public sector increases on the other side. But the flip side of that is there's more than enough food in the world to feed everyone.
Yeah.
Every single person in India, every kid can get an AI solar powered for probably $10 per year per kid. So, you've got 150 IQ buddy. How cool is that? We'll be able to cure disease and other stuff. But this transition period is going to be real rough. And I don't see any way that it isn't.
And I think you also make the point, and I think which is, counter to what most people try to make, is saying, we have seen this story before. Yes, there is a technological shift, it will disrupt old jobs, but new jobs get created. But I think you make the point very clearly that this is not like any previous technological transition. This time it will not create new jobs.
Yeah, because there will be some new jobs, but really previous technologies had economies of scale, right? This has an economy of scope. There will be an 8 billion parameter model which works on a Raspberry Pi or any laptop in the last 10 years. Again, the install base is there. It isn't like the 5G antennas need to turn and go up. This will work on a freaking geophone. That will be able to get a gold medal in the IMO probably, right? It will be able to beat the best physicist. And that's just one file. Once it's trained once, it's done. Oh, look, we zoomed out. So that's like Stable Diffusion. A 2 gigabyte file can generate any image. We only had to train that once. And so this is the big shift that we've never seen before, because cognitively, where do we go? Not everyone's going to be an entrepreneur. Not everyone's going to be a leading physicist. Not everyone's going to discover. Most people just want to be able to live a good life, and be there with their family. Which is why things like I discuss in the book, like your network that surrounds you is important. Your individual intelligence capability is important. Your diversity of sources of income and things like that are important. And again, we can prove that all mathematically. Because the one axis that we have, which is that knowledge was special and the organization of information into knowledge, the computation as opposed to consciousness side, AI will beat you on computation all day long. The more your job and your education made you into a machine, the machines will be able to do it better.
But and I think you make this point in the book as well. For most people, job does way more than just providing you a source of income. It's your identity. It gives you some meaning. It gives you access to network, and it organizes your day. Even outside of that, whatever little time you have left, it's consumed by all the other attention capturing devices the world has invented so far. So when I wouldn't have job to manage these 4 or 5 things for me, anymore, I have to almost relearn how to live.
It's do you live to work to live, right? This is the question. And again, if you've got a strong community and things like that, you won't be that affected. If you don't, then you will be affected. And, there are these hygiene factors of, well, if I can't feed my family, then that's a big deal. And again, this is going to be a big, big issue for India in particular, because everyone's like Infosys and things like that, are they a short? I'm like, no, it's a long, because they'll just replace all the humans with GPUs, right? Which are much cheaper, speak perfect English, can go and do the jobs of integration elsewhere, right? But then what does it do for that entire sector? Just like the call center sector. We haven't seen that much disruption yet in the call center sector, but Grok 4.1 Fast just scored 96% on Taubench, which is a call center benchmark. 50 cents for a million words. Next year, the call center industry is just dead, completely gone. And so this will happen industry after industry. And the question is, what are you rotating to? You had to learn to code. Well, again, I challenge anyone to be able to code better than Opus 4.5. It's really hard. You might be able to do it a little bit. In fact, Anthropic said this. Anthropic, again, top-notch level company, they give a take-home test. Opus 4.5 scored higher than any human has ever scored on that take-home test. And that's what you're competing against now.
But just to be clear, connecting back to your earlier point, Opus 4.5 may be the world's best programmer today, but that does not mean that we are all going to pay rent to Opus 4.5 or Opus 17.5 forever. There's going to be hundreds of other models which are equally competent and be available to all of us as nearly free cost.
Yeah, so you've got DevStral by Mistral that scores 68% on SWE bench verified,
Yeah.
and Opus 4.5 scores 75%. So you have one is Apache, the other one isn't.
Yeah.
But this kind of all just comes down to one thing: the cost of intelligence, taking an input and transforming it into something else,
Yeah.
is collapsing. And if you think about a code base, a typical code base is about 100,000 tokens.
Yeah.
So that's about $2.50 for Opus,
Right.
or it's about 5 cents for one of these more efficient models.
Yeah.
It used to be that you needed a multiple of that, so you needed 1 million or 5 million tokens to get it into shape.
Yeah.
Now, if you go to AI Studio and you hit vibe coding and you load up Gemini 3 for free, it looks really nice. It's not purple gunk garbage websites anymore,
Yeah. Yeah.
And they work really nice and it's free. So again, the problem is that the cost of cognition and intelligence is literally going to zero. So if you have a market where something is priced at zero,
Yeah.
what is the market anymore?
Right.
So which is why you need to think like Taylor Swift is not going bankrupt. Like people will still want Bollywood, things like that. Attention and human attention is still valuable, but we do need to rethink how money enters the economy. Like AI doesn't need to when fully AI companies go, they don't need money for food or drink or anything. They just need money for electricity and GPUs, and they don't need much. So this is a big issue. In fact, one of the ways I like to think about it is we have this new continent, AI Atlantis, and all the immigrants are coming, digital immigrants.
Yeah, digital immigrants. Right.
And they cost nothing. Again, they'll undercut us all.
That's right. And I guess so. There is no. Doesn't matter whether it's a developed country or not. Yeah.
Exactly. Like India benefited from offshoring, but now we're offshoring to silicon.
Right. That's right. Let me come to your new company, Intelligent Internet. And as I was reading through just overall the kind of charter that's as you have articulated on your website, it sounded very much like, at least in spirit, what OpenAI was started to do 10-11 years ago. I think the charter has obviously changed quite dramatically, but seems like in some way you care about you're saying all these things belong to humanity as a whole. They should be open source, equal access. So just take the listeners through your thinking behind why Intelligent Internet needs to exist.
Yeah, so I left my previous company, Stability, last year because I was like, who's going to build the AI that teaches my kid, manages my health, and guides my government?
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's going to be weird, right?
That's Elon Musk. We all know the answer.
Well, like earlier this year, the Trump tariffs were done on ChatGPT, and it wasn't even done on thinking. It was done on 4.0. You can see by the pattern of the countries and things like that. Like these things are going to happen more and more. So I was like, let's build a full stack for that, agents for that.
Yeah.
So you have sovereign AI from your family to your nation that's aligned with you as an open stack that everyone runs, and that's Intelligent Internet. So, for example, we announced in Saudi Arabia with the FII a month or so ago a project called SAGE, the Sovereign AI Governance Engine, which is big supercomputers to help governments with policy for free. And then citizens will be able to give their input on policy.
Yeah.
So it's like, can do everything from simulations to build websites to do presentations. So you'll have living documents where you can find the latest on quantum and its impacts upon organization in India, or robotics, see every company and what they're doing. And again, like regulations, rules, and things like that. On an individual basis, we've been working on a universal AI concept by having AI Agent, which I think is soon the world's best agent. It's top of the benchmarks already on SW Bench Pro and Terminal Bench and things like that. And again, we just want people to have a stack that they can run where every medical diagnosis is checked again. You can run it in your schools yourself, and then it kind of goes from there. Or you can run it in your government to help guide you through what's coming. And we think that's important because that stack will eventually become the AI that's closest to you, your Jarvis. And you don't want to run anyone else's stack for that. So within it, you can access any type of AI. We have all of the top providers. It's open source fully. And again, I think that will be essential infrastructure for what's coming, because someone has to do it.
And you don't need tens of billions of dollars to build this?
No, I mean, we built state-of-the-art stuff. It's my old team from Stability across benchmarks. So like health one's top, agent is top, medical is kind of top, all these kind of things, search is top. Because you just need to know what to build in the right way. But the other part of it that we're doing is we're going to be building national champions fully owned by the people of each nation. So, come to India and that should be the biggest company on the stock exchange, but how can you make it so every Indian is a part of that and owns it? And then they can take that generalized stack and then deploy it locally. These highly optimized models, these highly optimized agents we're running, because I don't know what's best for India. I don't know what's best for Uttar Pradesh, but the people locally can do that. So if you enable that for civic AI, education, health, government, then that's really important to have for that. That's the stuff that I think really matters. It doesn't matter so much for movie making and other stuff, use whatever you want, but at least have an AI that's on your side to help you through this, and have an entity in each country, in each region, that's basically super aligned for that, because the integration opportunity of this technology is massive. There will be a transformation phase. The ability of this to guide you through a new economy is massive, but you must make it local. You can't make it into, again, I call it cognitive colonialism. If you're using the models to teach your kids and day-to-day life that are made by someone else, you will become them. They're not on your side. Look, like I said, kind of like a Linux, basically, a very localized Linux.
Look, this message will resonate a lot with a lot of folks in India. I think people have been quite worried about this cognitive colonialism that you're alluding to. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs will be very interested in hearing what you just mentioned. So just elaborate a bit more. If let's say I'm an entrepreneur in Uttar Pradesh or Bihar or Rajasthan, and I want to be a local champion, build some cutting edge AI to solve my local problems, leveraging what you are building as a platform at Intelligent Internet. How do I start? What do I do? What can I aspire for?
So we have our generalized Replit GenSpark generalized agent that you can just download. It's fully open source and you can create your own version right now. But what we're planning to do next year is, we're going to come to India, other nations, and build one national entity that's owned by as many local institutions as people as possible. So in certain countries, the government's allowing us to do crowdsourcing, accelerated listing, because just like you have your telcos, you have your banks, AI should be a utility.
Right.
And then that can be a real beacon to gather the talent to enable the entrepreneurs on the ground, to enable the institutions to transform. And the only remit of that entity is the AI future of India, of Pakistan, of Bangladesh, etc. And so I think that's kind of the missing gap here, because you don't have someone to bring it all together with a common stack for these particular things. Like I said, the civic AI stuff, because the same stack can be generalized to private sector, but that's not what utility is, you don't need to compete in that area. So right now, like I said, people can go and get AI agent and it's right at the top of the benchmarks, and they can roll their own agents, and you'll see more and more feature functionality, from full chat to being able to talk to it to massive decision support systems that'll go forward. And the wonderful thing about open source is it's permissionless. Again, just like Stable Diffusion, anyone can download it, but someone's got to build it really good, which is again what our focus was. But the localization and others, that comes separate.
And I don't know whether in the context of open source, how much one can use the word competition, but given that, as you mentioned, Chinese are extremely good at engineering and they are just throwing all kind of open source models, is that at some point, let's say, I'm an entrepreneur, I want to build something in open source, I'll have to pick between Quen versus DeepSeek versus what Intelligent Internet is building?
So we're building the frameworks and scaffolding, so the agent software, and there'll be education, healthcare, and other versions. But it's compatible with any AI.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter. But our belief is that the AI that you have teaching your kids should be open source, open data. So by building that from scratch, and building the medical models and the decision support government models from scratch fully, so you can interrogate the data, you have generalized data that's then specialized to India, that's then specialized to Bangalore, You've got a stack of universal AI provided to your kids that and you can tailor it to your own culture, your own beliefs, your own backgrounds, and it's visible. And again, that can then interoperate with the other ones. Just like your own graduate versus the others. And so it's meant to be an interoperable system, because we identified the most important thing was the control plane. Who's between you and the other AIs? So these national champions, their mission will be to give free AI to everyone in the country, funded by integration and all the other things they do as a utility. And then that should be compatible with everything and everyone. It shouldn't be closed again. Because why would you use ChatGPT in an organization if you can run an open source interface that has access to every AI, your own and external ones, and you can change it any way you want because it's open source? Again, we think that's the critical layer that we want to make sure isn't controlled by corporations and is more like, again, a Linux type open source stack that you can have your own sovereignty on.
That's outstanding. I think a lot of people will be rooting for you, Emad, if we can have this open source, open data stack available for thousands or probably hundreds of thousands of people to build local AI, which they can fully understand and train as per their respective needs. I think it's going to be a huge asset for the world. I want to ask you today, so AI is clearly driving the world. It seems like, all of humanity's future is in some ways linked with the future of AI. Who is driving the future of AI? Is it few dozen people in the world? Is it few thousand people? Like, how concentrated the future of AI?
So it was maybe half a dozen people. Now I think it's going to proliferate dramatically.
Yeah.
From a technological perspective, because all the models are just getting good enough. But we're going to see massive breakthroughs coming in the next 6 to 12 months because the AIs are good enough to make breakthroughs now. And who knows? Power may concentrate extremely then because of the nature of the breakthroughs that we're seeing coming. But again, the capability to build stuff that's genuinely useful is getting more and more broad. Like, again, anyone listening to this can build a full company with an AI probably in a year. Definitely right now they can build a full app and website without knowing anything. There are SEO agents, there are others. It's the great democratizing technology. And I think it's very interesting because sure, the BPO sector, other things will come and challenge in India, right? But compare that to the US. So many jobs are at risk there. And they don't have a community to fall back on. So we should really be thinking about how can we use the AI to build stronger communities, to organize things better. And again, I think this is somewhere where India is basically a country that's often faced a coordination challenge. It's done amazing things like Aadhaar, right? Aadhaar plus this technology can cause a leap forward because you should be able to compete with anyone remotely. Like previously BPO was at that level, whereas now you should be able to compete with the best law firms. You should be able to compete with the best designers. Like, again, it's a big uplift, but only if you really try things and you build that. And that means a lot more people can participate in this because, as you said, it's not gated. It's not like GPT-7 is only available to a few people and it's expensive. You will have equivalent open models, but we can't let the defaults be that ChatGPT is given to every citizen because that's the important part, the data, the identity. That coordination layer.
Yeah, I think the governments around the world and definitely in India needs to be a lot more vigilant about these things because these big tech companies are also very persuasive about why free access to GPT or Azure cloud or whatnot is great for everybody. It makes for a great PR and that all that.
It was like internet.org from Meta again coming to India, right? It was very seductive, but the government did push back. But at the same time, they do need to build local capability. It was just very difficult to say what the capability was. Again, how many Indians are there training state-of-the-art models? I know at least 100 myself personally. Are they in India? No. Okay, some of them and others are doing a good job, right? But nothing compared to the potential of the country. Especially because most of the AI companies' CEOs are Indian, right? Like Sundar and
that's right. Yeah. You mentioned you're going to be here for India, the AI summit in February. This is going to be a big event. And I don't know, maybe it's a bit preliminary to ask that question, but what are some of 2 or 3 things India has to get right before your socio-economic upheaval, becomes something staring you in the face? We have few-year window. What will be some of your key messages that we really need to get that right now?
Well, I mean, we do need to think about you need to get together and say, what does India 2030, 2035, 2040 look like under a reasonable set of scenarios, right? And have that shared vision of the default versus positives, and again, the tech tree that needs to be built around that. One of the most important things that India can do right now is build out national data sets. very high quality LLM ready data sets will be the biggest unlock you can possibly have. And again, that's a coordination problem, right? The compute required to build state of the art models is in the order of 10 to 100 million. Again, that's well within what's being built out if it's used in the right way. And it's then about how do we repurpose so that the objective here has to be taking on everyone during this period, you know? So I would say that practically data sets, shared vision, and then thinking about the skills and the distribution that needed around all that. Because I'm sure this year the IIT students found it much harder to get jobs than last year.
Right.
Next year will not be very pretty at all. And then the year after is when things really fall off a cliff.
Yeah, and given that's kind of possible worldview that we are looking at, just and you're not making these claims 1 or 2 decade out. You are saying this is a reality is going to hit us in year or two. Yeah, maybe I want to just maybe on the closing note, Emad, I want to help us all of us visualize 2030, which is not that far out, just 3-4 years out. What does the world look like? When if you're having this conversation 2030, what will be biggest top of mind things for us at that point?
So you'll be able to have by 2030 a $10,000-$20,000 robot that can do anything a human can do physically.
In 2030.
Yes. So if you look at something like Sunday Robotics, just with a $200 hand sensor, they figured out how to do all household tasks.
Yeah.
And it was one intern training that model. On like less than 100K of compute.
Yeah.
Like robots will be able to do just about any task with the actuators and others. And again, that works out to $1 per person per hour. AI on your MacBook will be able to do almost any cognitive task. Probably all cognitive tasks that make up the economy.
Yeah.
And then people by then, like again, we need to have real decisions around how do people get money? How do people live? How do we coordinate? Because if you look at most AGI extrapolations, the bears are 10 years away. Most people are at 2028, 2029 for an AI that can do anything a human can do. But that will be doing much, much cheaper. So this is why it's a bit crisis. This is why we've got things like SAGE for global policy coordination. Actually, that's another thing India needs to do. Like, just have an absolute Manhattan project to use AI to sort all the stupid regulation.
Yeah.
I'm serious. Like, if that's the biggest thing they could possibly do. Say, is this in the interest of the Indian people? Apply computation to that. Because it will be the countries that clean up things like that will outperform. But then, like I said, there's some very hard questions. So in the book, I suggest that monetary creation should come from being human. That we should reward benefit and then have the AIs buy that from us. Because taxation doesn't work. Because the tax base is going to do that. Right. AIs are tax deductible, unlike humans that pay income tax, And let's just increase the discussion here because I'm not sure what it looks like even by 2030, except for a lot more chaotic. And 2035, 2040, I can see some very dark things happening.
And should I extrapolate that to say like long-term future, with the AI-driven future of humanity is not necessarily very optimistic?
I think there's a Star Trek future where everything is managed and then, we have abundance and then we can go and explore the stars, and the Star Wars future, which is like destruction and Clone Wars and all sorts of stuff. Like AI is the biggest force multiplier we've ever had. And again, just think about it this way. If everyone in India had 130 IQ buddy,
right?
How does India change? Because that's literally what we have here. Now, if Indians don't have access to that, then they're competing against people that do. That's awful.
Right.
It can be that, I'll give you an example, Elon Musk, I've zoomed in again. Elon Musk has 1 million GPUs, right?
Yeah.
That's equivalent to a workforce of 100 million BPO people.
Incredible.
It makes a difference when you think about it in those terms, right? Like, again, we need to think, what are people doing 5, 10, 15 years from now? What is the Indian dream? What does our society look like? How can we leverage this technology to build stronger communities so that people don't fall through the safety net, so they don't lose identity, get angry?
Yeah.
And again, the prescription I give is one of inevitability, because you can just extrapolate the performance of these things. You can look at certain discontinuities, like the amount of human equivalent hours of time AI can do. I figured I had to zoom out now. And things like that. And yeah, I don't see how it's going to be any other way.
Yeah, I think, and I think I'll would want to very strongly endorse your book. I think it's one of the best resource, and I'm not surprised it's already a bestseller. I think people who are trying to make sense of things, what AI is doing today, where it is going, and what are the kind of things we need to pay attention to. I think this is absolutely a gem of a resource that that people should check out, as well as we look forward to Emad, all the exciting work that you are doing in intelligent internet, and most importantly, doing your bit to make access to AI as democratic as possible, which is outstanding. So thanks so much for taking the time for speaking with me, and I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
At SparX, we aim to bring to you stories of exponential impact. We share in-depth analysis of what goes behind success stories. If you find our conversations interesting, you can join us by subscribing to our YouTube channel. You can also listen to SparX on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or any other audio platform of your choice. If you have any suggestions on who we should invite or what topics we need to cover, just let us know in the comments. We are always listening, looking for ways to improve, and keep getting better as we go along.